I just want to warn honorable members, I'm not going to play that cat and mouse game anymore about mics. Is there further debate on this motion? Honorable Leader of the Opposition and Member for Castries East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to support the motion as read by the Honorable Member for Castries South. But Madam Speaker, before I do that, I just want to make 2 points on the contribution, 3 points of contribution of the member for Ansari. Remember, before you asked him to make it a document of the House, he said St. Lucia had a failed launch. Failed. He used the word failed, and the document of the House shows disappointing. I will not ask you to ask him to withdraw. There's a classic difference between failed and disappointing. Very, very classic difference. I won't ask you, but you see that's, and as I go, Madam Speaker, I will show you how their own words will be used to show their own words, Madam Speaker. Their own words. I'm coming. So, Madam Speaker, he said that St. Lucia had a failed program, and the document says disappointing. Secondly, Madam Speaker, he says that St. Lucia, the program as envisaged by the government earlier party, was wrong because it failed. It did not have the results that it envisaged. The program was tabled in this honorable House on the 28th of July 2015. It was launched in October, and we started to receive applications in January. The elections were held in June, and the people decided. So you are judging 6 months. You're judging 6 months. And on 6 months, you have the wisdom and the knowledge to know in 6 months that it failed. Fine. Madam Speaker, first of all, when this government decided to go into the CIP, the government at the time understood the nuances and the issues involved. So a bipartisan committee was formed, and that committee comprised of members of the opposition, members of civil society, members of the Chamber of Commerce, and they decided that St. Lucia needed to go with a CIP program. The report was agreed in cabinet, and Parliament approved it. There were wide discussions, and the government at the time thought that it was important enough for there to be widespread discussions all over the country about the CIP program. But when the program was finally agreed to and the bill tabled in the Honorable House, the government at the time thought that there were 3 important things that had to be part of that program. 1, the honor and integrity of St. Lucia must be uppermost. St. Lucia cannot be for sale at any cost or at the lowest bidder. And the purpose of the program was to attract high-value investments. That was the purpose. It wasn't a matter of selling passports to the highest bidder or selling passports en masse. That was not the issue. We were guarding against the sale of St. Lucia's patrimony en masse. And I'll tell you something. And in that same contribution, the honorable member for Miku North, I think, who was leader of the opposition at the time, and I want to quote from Hansard. Hansard is already a document in the House, Madam Speaker. And I quote from page 24, Tuesday, July 25. And I quote, and here's what she said. I just heard my colleague from Castries North express an anxiety that perhaps should all investors register in Viewfort South, that may tilt the political landscape one way or the other. I could not help but hearing this in passing. I remember the SH is in Viewfort South. So I think we should consider voting rights are incorporated in here. The other one that almost piques my interest, almost immediately, was under miscellaneous number 42. Without prejudice the generality of the subsection, the minister may make regulations in respect of that. So we would have thought that when the regulations were being amended, that idea or that suggestion by the honorable leader of the opposition should be implemented in the regulations if that was a concern, that it would have shifted the voting rights in the South. But what we hear is 200 applicants from DSH are going to go in the South of the country. I leave it to you, Madam Speaker, to make your own deductions from that. Secondly, Madam Speaker, sorry. We said that the CIP should not create any enclaves in St. Lucia. And I remember the Prime Minister at the time made the point of enclaves, where he said that St. Lucians should be able to live everywhere in the country. And the example he used is Cap Estate. He said when Cap Estate started, and the impression was it would be an enclave. But St. Lucians have moved and lived into it, and they've integrated into Cap Estate. Not me, Madam Speaker, not me, I can't afford that. But the Prime Minister made that point, the then Prime Minister. And we warned that the CIP should not be used for that purpose. But we heard about DSH and an enclave in Viewfort. He also said that enclaves create problems for the country. And that has happened in Barbados, where there are high-worth individuals living in one part of Barbados. The government, to raise revenue, had to increase the property tax in that area. And the regular people who own houses in that area had to sell the houses because they could not pay the property tax. That's what happens when you create enclaves. And at that time, we warned that the CIP should not create enclaves. And the final one, Madam Speaker, is transparency, and the information must be made available to the public. That was important. And that is why, in the legislation, we had certain requirements that the minister responsible for CIP had to come to the House with full and transparent information on the CIP program. That was why that was put into the laws, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, the same IMF, and you note what the minister is speaking about is CBI fiscal revenues. CBI fiscal revenues on budget in percent of GDP. What that document is saying is relating to the revenues from the CIP, not the makeup of the program, not how the program was structured, but the revenues at a particular time. And they compared 2007 to 2016. That's the document. St. Lucia came in late in 2016. So there's a fundamental difference between that and what the IMF said about the CIP program. In its report of the board of directors in February 2016, the IMF report for February 2016, the board of directors took note of the newly launched CIP program in St. Lucia. Among these transparency provisions, the IMF noted The board will have to report annually to Parliament on the activities of the program, including on the number of applications, approvals, rejections, as well as detailed information on the successful applicant. That's what the IMF said about our program, the real IMF, not revenues, when they were analyzing the program, the CIP program in its entirety. It also said, the new CIP warrants a prudent approach. In addition to the financial integrity risks associated with CIP, vulnerabilities arise from potential fiscal dependence on these revenues, which can be volatile and subject to certain stops. The annual cap on approved citizenship applications would be a strong device for containing these risks, and adjustments to this cap should be made carefully. That is the IMF reporting in February, the board of directors in February 2016, not the revenues, not a comparison of CBI fiscal revenues and budget. Two fundamentally different things, Madam Speaker. The one, the IMF board of directors are speaking about appraising St. Lucia for the steps it took in implementing the CIP, and the second one is the revenues based on the reality of the situation. Madam Speaker, the IMF reports of February 2016, the report of the board of directors. Madam Speaker, but what happened, Madam Speaker, is when in opposition, the government, when we're in opposition, they were excited about the CIP. They said all kinds of things, Madam Speaker. And, Madam Speaker, I got some clippings and excerpts from press conferences and statements made by members on the other side. And I want to make it a document to the House before I begin to read from them. You hear, Madam Speaker, members are very pious. They always wanted CIP. They thought CIP was good. All what they did was to make CIP easier for people to invest. Piousness, mea culpa. Listen to what they started to say about the CIP. UWP Miku Solve Meeting, December 6, 2016. The Honorable Alan, no, he wasn't, yes, he was Honorable. The Honorable Alan Shasley. We want the government to reconstitute the board. It cannot be that cabinet is going to appoint all the people on the board. The commission must be independent and autonomous from government. They changed the regulations. Did they do that? December 6, 2015, Microsoft public meeting. The person who said so, I will mention, he's not a member of the House, I will mention his name. I'll mention his name, but I won't say what he said. His name is Oswald Augustine. I won't say what he said. He's not here to defend himself. Although I know he will defend himself at some point. Alan Shasley again. December 6, 2015. Microsoft public meeting. Somebody had to get paid some money. I'm not saying who. I'm asking the question. Who got paid? And do you know whether the bands that were playing tonight in Viewport, whether in fact that was Jufali's money? Do we know whether, in fact, the campaign that the Labour Party is going to run in the next election, every billboard that you see going up, every ad that you see, you have to ask yourself, is that what St. Lucia gave up in order to protect Mr. Jufali? The last place you want to put Mr. Hille is to sell the passports of St. Lucia. So much so, Madam Speaker, for improper motives. So much so, and the member for Castries South eloquently made the point of how many diplomatic passports have been sold or have been given. I want to use the word given. He's made a point, Madam Speaker. Guy Joseph, May 9th.
On a point of order. Madam Speaker, I'd just like to indicate that the Honourable Member for Castries East is making reference to a matter that is before the court.
Yes. Yeah, matters before the court are sub judice. Yes? And we have to avoid them. We know that.
Madam Speaker, in this very House, you rule on this same matter, on a point of order, Madam Speaker, on a point of order, 35-1. You rule it was permissible for members on the other side to cite the case because it was a defamation case. Today I'm hearing you're ruling otherwise. I just want for the record, Madam.
Pardon? Yes, okay. Yes.
Madam Speaker, May 9, 2016, Guy Joseph, DBS News. I wonder if Dr. Hilaire would take a lie detector test that he just made there, because any right St. Lucian would believe that of a deal was made, that Dr. Hilaire would come on television and say that a deal was made. But apparently, conveniently now, he appears to know what has happened. So we are to take Ernest Hilaire's word that there was no deal made with Jufali? Is Ernest Hilaire now a Kenny Anthony? Seems to me that because it appears to me that the St. Lucian public just supposed to take it. December 15, 2015, Gail Rigobot. For those who want to diminish the importance of the Jufali situation, let me remind the government and people of St. Lucia that as a small island state, our reputation is of utmost importance, and that when we engage both citizens and non-citizens to hold ambassadorial positions or to act on behalf of the people and country, that these people must be held to the highest standards. We must never seem as using our diplomatic passports and or diplomatic immunity to protect the personal agendas of some. That is very risky. And on the eve of the implementation of the Citizenship by Investment program, I can well imagine the alarm bells that rang throughout the international community because of this Jufali matter, because it raises several questions. NBC News, April 21st, 2016, Alan Shasley. I just cannot believe that it took Dr. Hilaire this long to do something common sense ought to have told him. He should not have allowed the name of St. Lucia and the reputation of St. Lucia to the extent that it is. I think that he is personally responsible for tarnishing the CIP program along with the Prime Minister. He has refused to put in legislation to make sure the CIP program is independent. I want to read it again. He has refused to put in legislation to make sure that the CIP program is independent. I mean forever. CIP is now going to be affiliated with politicians in St. Lucia. Now, these were the statements before June 16. They have changed the regulations. They have amended the regulations, but not in none of these amendments have they decided to put in the things that they were talking about when in opposition. That is when reality of government hits you, and that is when you realize all what you were saying on the campaign trail was incorrect, and you were saying to people what you would not have done, but you said it because you believed that there was a soft underbelly and you could get political favor. And that is what happens to you. So you change the regulations and you refuse to do any of the things that you said you would have done when you were in opposition. As evidenced by what you said in public and what you said in this honorable House. Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition at the time wrote several letters about the CIP program. He wrote several letters about the CIP. And the gist of these letters was transparency. The board had to be independent. He asked the Chamber of Commerce to appoint people on the board. He said that the board should be autonomous. He also said that the money from the CIP, people should know where that money is going. Madam Speaker, at that time, the member from Miku South was screaming about transparency, screaming about the board of directors. He has amended the regulations. What he has done in amending the regulations, he has removed one, the cap. A $500 cap would have given scope for more transparency. We would have been able to know who the people who had bought our citizenship, and we'd be able to find out who they were, what was their bargain, etc. $500 per year, easier to manage. Now, by your own words, Madam Speaker, you are saying, I am making no bones about it. We are trying to sell as many citizenship programs as we can in the shortest period of time in order to get that money, in order to be able to sell, to seed the sovereign fund. That is the same people in opposition that were clamoring for transparency, clamoring for accountability. Now they want to sell as many passports as possible. But, Madam Speaker, I will put it to you that with the reduction of the CIP, the donations portion of the CIP, St. Lucia is losing more than it is gaining. And the example I will give you, Madam Speaker, is the range development. And in that development, what is being used, Madam Speaker, is the real estate option. Under the old real estate option, Madam Speaker, the developer was given a number of investment slots to raise capital for the development. Using the approach, the developer gets US $300,000 for investment, whereas government gets the fees according to whether it's a single applicant or family. A family would pay more. The investor who gets that citizenship holds the investment for at least 5 years. So he has the $300,000 investment option. He can hold it for 5 years. And that's important because I'll come back to you why that is important. Because he's got a slot he can hold for 5 years, and I'll tell you why it's important in a while, Madam Speaker. During that time, Madam Speaker, that investment, he is paid a return on investment by the developer. So each time an investor buys into the development, the government gets fees, he pays vendor's tax, they pay stamp duty, they pay a lawyer for deed of sale, and even pays a real estate agent for commission if the sale is from a real estate agent. That is the old option. The old option where he had it in $300,000 US dollar slots, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, for range development, for the range development, the Prime Minister, contrary to Section 33(2) of the Act, and I'll read Section 33(2) of the Act, Madam Speaker, for ease of reference. I'd have to make it a document of the House because it was passed in this honorable House. Section 33(2) of the CIP Act, here's what it says. It says, the St. Lucia National Economic Fund is established. Qualifying investments of cash shall be paid into the St. Lucia National Economic Fund. Subsection 2. Subsection 3. The Minister for Finance shall lay before Parliament every financial year for its approval the purposes to which the funds will be allocated. Section 43(2). Correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Speaker. I see nothing in that act about sovereign fund. If there is, I yield. I see no mention in the act of sovereign fund. If there is, I yield. But, Madam Speaker, it speaks about the National Economic Fund. But, Madam Speaker, in the range development, Madam Speaker, is a public knowledge, is a project worth $166 million US dollars, 453 million EC dollars. 453 million EC dollars, Madam Speaker. Now, We want to make one assumption. The applicants are families of 4. Under the new plan, as changed contrary to Section 43.2, you would need 1,105 applicants to buy donations in the range developments. That will come, Madam Speaker, and the Prime Minister said that 1,105 applicants will give you the $453 million you need for the development. But he is going to on-lend that money to range at 2%. Now, we borrow money to do projects in St. Lucia at 6%. 6%, 6.5%, sometimes 7%. But the government is selling 1,105 of St. Lucian passports and going to lend it to a foreigner at 2%. Going to sell 1,105 St. Lucian passports and on-lend it to a foreigner for 2%, at 2%. So the only benefit from that initial sale of the 1,105 passports, apart from the fees that are paid to the agents, etc., would be the interest of 2% on $453 million. That's the only benefit. Now, let me tell you what will happen under the old system. Under the old system, Madam Speaker, you would need 560 investors, each at $300,000 to invest. These investors would pay the government vendor tax, they'd pay the government stamp duty, they'd pay the government administration fees, even though you remove the 20% that the Prime Minister is talking about. The authorized agent, Madam Speaker, would get $5,000, and St. Lucia would earn, after 5 years, $223 million from the sale of 560 passports if they had used the old option. So over a 20-year period, Madam Speaker, look at the amount of money St. Lucia would have earned, as compared to the new regime where the donation is $100,000 and you take the St. Lucian's passport money, you on-lend it to range to development, or you on-lend it to any other person at 2%. But you're going to borrow money to develop the country at 6%, something at 7%. And where are the benefits for St. Lucia, Madam Speaker? Where are the benefits for St. Lucia? So, Madam Speaker, in the old system of donations, even though it was $300,000, the investment slots could be sold, they could be bought, they could be sold, and money would have been made anytime the investment is bought or sold. But in that new option, the $100,000 period, 1,105 passports, that's it. What St. Lucia gets is a hotel and the interest. But, Madam Speaker, how do we know that the hotel, and I don't want to be misquoted here, how are we sure that the hotel will be completed? History shows us there are a number of failed projects all over. In our time, the Pralin was a failed project. We started with good intentions. It was a failed project. We started with good intentions. It was a failed project. We agree. There are several failed projects all over the region. If you go to Antigua now, you see a number of hotels that were started and failed. But what we're doing is that we are selling 1,105 of our passports, and we're taking the money and we're lending it to a foreigner at 2%. That's exactly what we're doing, and we call that great economic policy, and we call that in search of jobs. That is what we call it. Finally, Madam Speaker, the changes. There is nothing in the legislation that allows the Minister of Finance to do that. He cannot show me anything in the law, in the CIP legislation, that gives him the authority to sell our passports and on-lend it. There's absolutely nothing in that act. He cannot tell me. He's got absolutely no authority to do what he's doing unless he changes the law as it relates to CIP. Finally, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister announces that the money will go to Invest in Lucia. Invest in Lucia is not a lending agency. Invest in Lucia is an investment promotion agency. So you're going to send the money to Invest in Lucia, for Invest in Lucia will on-lend to foreigners, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, you see, the whole construct of that is wrong. It's a government that's economic policies are failing. They've realized that the reality of the situation is such that they cannot do what they plan to do. They've realized that the promises that they made on the campaign trail, they cannot follow it. So they have one option. One option is to sell passports en masse. That is the only option. And if they do not sell passports en masse, and that is why, as we speak, there's an investment mission going to China to sell passports. If they haven't left, they'll be leaving soon. If not today, tomorrow. En masse, all over the world, selling our passports. Because the economic policies, they've realized the reality of government has hit them. All the plans, fixed schools, roads, the reality has hit them that there just isn't enough revenue to deal with all the promises that you make. So the only solution, to their mind, is to sell passports en masse. So the patrimony of St. Lucia does not matter. You make an excuse that you have 100,000 people. If you sell $100,000, the people may have more integrity than people who owe $3 million. All sorts of excuses. You clouded it with diplomatic passports, all kind of excuses, because you do not want to agree that you have a problem in revenue. You cannot fulfill the promises you made to the people of St. Lucia. You can't. You don't have the scope, you don't have the range, you don't have the money. You had to cut several things. Carifesta, you cut. National Trust, you cut. NICE, you cut. Because you don't have the money. So the only solution you have is to sell passports en masse. And that's exactly what this government is doing. They are selling passports en masse so that because the economic policies that they promised the electorate, they cannot. The reality has hit them. They've realized now that there are issues to get money to do what they promised to do. The reality of government is set in, so the only solution is to sell our patrimony en masse. To go on a salesman pitch. St. Lucia passports for sale, $100. Who wants? That is how we have cheapened our CIP program. So, Madam Speaker, I want to urge this government to act responsibly and relook at the changes they've made to the regulations. I want to ask them also to act responsibly and amend the legislation. If you want to have a sovereign fund and you want to take people passport money, and on lend to foreigners at 2%, amend the legislation. Mr. Prime Minister, follow the law. Amend. There is nothing in that gives you the right to do that. You can't do it. There is nothing that says you can do it. If you want to do it, you've got to come to this honorable house and you have to amend the legislation and allow this house to debate on these amendments. Finally, Madam Speaker, I want to know who are St. Lucia's marketing agents. I know there was Atom Capital and there was CS Global. These are the two marketing agents that we had. And the same Minister of Finance made a hue and cry saying that the government had used Atom Capital to lobby for them in the impacts matter. Attacking this government, saying that we'd use Atom Capital to lobby for us in the impacts matter. Right now, we hear, and this is made a document to the House, that Henley and Partners are in St. Lucia. Is Henley and Partners here? as advisors? Are they here as marketing agents? Are they here as promoters? What are they in St. Lucia as? We need to know that, because the legislation says that you have to publish the marketing agents. You've got to follow the legislation. You have to publish the marketing agents. You have not published Henny and Partners as a marketing agent, but you have Henny and Partners is opening a new office in St. Lucia. It's fourth in the Caribbean. The question is, what is Henny and Partners? So, Madam Speaker, I want to urge this House to allow good sense to prevail. Let us sit down and relook at that CIP legislation. Let it make it more compliant to what the government thinks they want. Let us not speak about things that are not in the legislation. There is nothing in the legislation that says the Minister of Finance can take people's passport money and lend to foreigners. There's nothing that says so. And I want anybody to show it to me. There's nothing that says so. It is not in the law, and he should desist from doing it. If he wants, he's got to come to this honorable House and change the law to make that possible. So all the flashing mirrors about Jufali and this and that, all these things are flashing mirrors for a government who have come to the reality that they haven't got money to do what they want to do. They haven't got the fiscal scope to do what they have to do. And they have decided, Madam Speaker, they have decided to sell passports to solve the problem. Now, Madam Speaker, you know, look at what the cabinet conclusion that the minister circulated. Now, I want to say, man, he said. Now, Madam Speaker, before I say it, I want to read it carefully. Could you give me 2 minutes to read it? The minister said that was a CIP approved project. He said so, right? Did he say? He said that was a CIP approved project. All right, now, Madam Speaker, I want to take some time to read it. And I want to tell the Madam Speaker, if the minister
also said there was no DCA.
He says no DCA. Now, I want to take time to read it because that is what is circulated. Can you give me some time, please, not to read it? That's got by the Honorable Member for Ansari. And you may recall, he said it was an approved CIP project and there was no DC approval. Could I take a few minutes to look at it for him to see what he said? Can I read it, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker. Cabinet, he said, and he said, Madam Speaker, we can't allow that to happen. It's the same thing that happened in the campaign, saying whatever they want, economic terrorists, saying whatever they want, just to soil people's characters. Just to soil people's characters and impute improper motives. Look at the cabinet conclusion. Can I read it? Application by Boca Estates Limited for tourism incentives to facilitate the development of Belvedere Plantation. Cabinet considered a memorandum dated 7 July 2014, submitted by the Ministry of Tourism, Heritage and Creative Industries. Cabinet rescinded conclusions 233 of 14 April and pursuant to the Tourism Stimulus and Investment Act, number 12 of 2014, approved the following. That Belvedere Plantation be declared an approved development. It goes, that's a continuation incentive act. 100% waiver of import duty and value added tax on all building construction material, blah, blah, blah. It goes, page 2, 100% waiver of import duty and VAT on furniture, blah, blah, blah. 100% waiver of import duty on imports of alternative energy saving. That incentives granted in clause 2, 3, and 4 be subject to approval of the bills authorities by the Ministry of Tourism, as usual. 100% waiver of import duty and excise duty on 2 vehicles appropriate for the terrain, 4 buggies, 4 ATV for exclusive use. Number 3, all vehicles granted should carry the Belvedere Plantation logo, visibly imprinted, blah, blah, blah. 100% exemption on the chargeable income of the companies involved in the ownership of the project. 100% waiver of property tax payable on the properties involved in the development for the period. That the management of Belvedere Plantation submits a biannual report from the date of commencement of the project. That the Ministry of Tourism, Heritage and Creative Industries be informed of any changes. That the applicant complies with the monetary requirements of the Ministry of Tourism. Where is CIP status in that document? Madam Speaker, I want to propose to you that the member be cited for misleading the House. That the document that is circulated, the member be cited for misleading the House. Because you are telling this honorable House that you are going to circulate a document that says that a project was CIP approved, and we approved it. And the document that is circulated says nothing about CIP or DC approval. Madam Speaker, how can we allow that to happen? But that is why they were there today. I think so, Madam Speaker. The member must be cited because he's misled the House and the evidence of misleading the House is there. So I want to propose, Madam Speaker, that the member be put before the Committee of Privileges and be cited for misleading the House. I want to make that proposition today, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that is what is happening in St. Lucia.
So noted, Madam Clerk. And we'll proceed accordingly.
You say, Madam Speaker, the truth will come to bear, Because all these things that have been said, all this pompous rising on point of order, etc., Madam Speaker, all these things will come to bear. Because what has happened in the technological age now is anything you say is recorded, and anything you say will be, not can be, will be cited at a different time. So, Madam Speaker, I want to support the motion by the Honourable Member for Castries South. I want to say that the government should listen and consider what you said. When we implemented CIP, we did not think that it would be an issue that would not have any sort of controversy. We knew it was sensitive. That is why we involved everybody. We are saying to this government, involve everybody again. Involve everybody again in its implementation or in the changes. Involve everybody. I have said to the Prime Minister, I've said to him, there are certain things that he and I can work with. I cited to him about the correspondent banking. That's not a political issue. I cited to him about air travel. That's not a political issue. There are certain things that we have to take away from the political hustles. We have to be mature. We have to be statesmen. You in government now. Stop that. And let us try our best to make St. Lucia succeed. And trying our best to make St. Lucia succeed does not mean selling our passports en masse. Thank you, Madam Speaker.